Computer. Awesome. We are set to go. Philip, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you here finally and that we get to have this conversation today because I think it's a pivotal moment that we're in right now. And the work that you're doing, I believe, is helping the world and more importantly, helping men, which is going to be a big topic that I want to dive into today.
Because we are half the world.
Yes, you are. However, well, we'll get into it. I don't want to get into the stats right now of what's going on with men, but I wanted to talk to you. I know you do a lot of leadership work with companies and creating nice, healthy culture within the companies. Can you share a little bit more about that and what you do and give a little mini intro about yourself and what you're doing with like these companies?
Yeah. Well, some of this is sourced in my origin story, and
which I'm happy to have you share.
Well, my origin story is like everybody else's origin story in that it is sourced in what they refer to as ACE, adverse childhood experiences, and so we all have that genesis of passion, and which really means to suffer. It's not just like excitement. Passion is to suffer, like the passion of the Christ.
Sure.
And so the things that wounded us in child, whether it be neglect, trauma, poverty, and we all have it.
Yeah.
They source our journeys through life. It set a trajectory, an azimuth for us. And there's a kind of common screenwriter philosophy that both the hero and the villain have the same origin story.
Yeah.
And they're oftentimes orphans, and they're oftentimes wounded catastrophically, which is sometimes literal, but it's most often metaphoric.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, those two paths diverge, and the villain, because he or she is wounded by the world and relationships, ends up punishing the world. Yeah. And the hero transmutes that pain into some form of service to save the world from being hurt. And really, that's the moment where we either perpetuate our ancestral curses and wounds, or we break them. And that's kind of the magical moment. And so, I grew up with a lot of those challenges in my childhood, and that led me towards again what they refer to as I guess the cognitive bias, or the rewiring that encourages us to choose familiar hells over unfamiliar heavens. So I enlisted in the Army at 17. I had a lot of kind of dysfunctional relationships and careers. But the moment I found you can call it leadership or personal growth world, and almost everybody's familiar with that because it's been so absorbed or embedded by our current culture. Yeah. That everybody knows about mindfulness and meditation and ice baths and that whole self-reflection world, which is really it's a very optimistic and exciting time.
Exactly.
When you say we're at a pivotal time, it's like, yeah, we're facing a lot of just existential nihilism, but we're at the most abundant time in human history and have access to more information, which is obviously it's distracting and diffusing a lot of people, but the ones that are integrating that information have never existed in the history of humans before. The amount of awareness and consciousness that people have, at least available to them. So when I discovered that, it really unlocked the awareness that it wasn't just me, because I really thought out of sort of shame and inadequacy that I was the broken one and everybody else was grown-ups and successful. And and it turns out that everybody has this imposter syndrome, and everybody's wondering if they're really a grown-up. And so when I realized that the world was saddled with this thing, that was a big awareness for me. And similarly, every organization has that same collective wound.
Yeah.
And I think we have this idea that there's the successful people that have made it, and they've escaped the wheel of suffering,
Mhm.
and that there are certain organizations that once you get into, then you've escaped that wheel of suffering. And the reality is that it's universal, it's ubiquitous, it's across every industry, and I've worked with, Disney and Red Bull and SpaceX and, like Google and like all the big places where you think I've made it to Gondor.
Right.
Well, they're all challenged by this core wound of humanity,
Mhm.
which leads me to my kind of anthropology journey. I was looking really in university for a field of study that would allow me to find out about myself and humans. And so, I kind of dabbled in a lot of different subjects. And when I just kind of landed on anthropology as a general field of study because it is the field of studying humans.
Right.
And that's really what I do and what ignites me. And particularly when we tend to study our own wounds, and I am a veteran and I am a man, and
Mhm.
so that field of study was really around warrior culture and how do we successfully integrate or reintegrate our warriors back home. What's behind all of the clinical anxiety, depression, addiction, suicide? Like, what is behind all that? Is it some sort of a just human curse that we've been saddled with, like original sin? Like, are we born to suffer like that? And what it turns out is, and I got to study with Budo culture in Japan, and I got to work with a Maasai in Africa, and that there are cultures that are not suffering in the same way we are suffering,
Yeah.
particularly indigenous cultures, the older cultures. And so it turns out that there's really, one word that I'm bringing back into organizations and with individuals and men's work, and that word is kinship. We've
Beautiful.
lost our kinship systems, and kinship it shares the same root as the word kind,
Mhm.
because kindness is that special treatment that we have reserved for the people within our kinship systems. And we're living in an artificial time where we don't have any kinship systems left. And so we have to recreate artificial kinship systems, which really are at this point, with the loss of all of the breakdowns of our big institutions, the church and this the abject state of politics these days, and
Mhm.
all of that. Really, the last place where we're still forced to gather and need to find some sort of shared vision for the future and values to operate by, that's work.
Yeah.
So my work um, is obviously to increase the productivity and success of organizations, but my vehicle for that is reinstalling kinship systems. And what that does is it boosts engagement and morale and retention and risk taking and healthy conflict. And all of those are just massive profit drivers.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm doing professionally with my company Wolf Tribe.
Beautiful. And now let me ask you, since 2020 happened and a lot of people ended up working from home, right?
Mhm.
Um, and we're seeing now that a lot of people are reluctant in a lot of ways to go back into
Mhm.
that work mode, that 9 to 5, going into offices. They've gotten comfortable into the remote work. How are you facilitating and navigating that situation? Are you creating community like virtually, or are you doing like what you do with the Wolf Tribe and taking people to retreats and things like that, or it's a little bit of both?
Yeah, there's certainly a hybrid model of creating engagement, um, you know, cultural development. Particularly that with remote work, it's efficient and it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways, remote work is almost like turning your coworkers into uh, Facebook
A
friends,
robot. Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah,
and it does contribute to a tremendous loss of engagement, because really what people do when we're together is that it creates a sense of belonging,
yeah,
and that sense of belonging is really what drives all the superpowers of humanity.
yeah.
And so remote work is it's a tough thing to do.
Mhm.
uh, there are a lot of ways that we can mitigate the negative impact of remote work, and uh, there's a foundation of really three core principles that people need so that they feel like they're a part of an affiliation or they have a sense of belonging. And the first one is a shared vision for the future. And most of the young kids, particularly who are coming out of Marshall, like business schools, and I do a lot of the leadership work down there. Um, they're not primarily focused on money and position like my generation was.
Yeah,
Most of the younger people have you would look at purpose as being almost their number one driver of why they would commit to an organization. And purpose is synonymous with vision. It means, what is significant about what your organization does. And even if you're making widgets, it's very important that you find something that is aspirational about what your company does. So even if you don't find the widgets aspirational, it's important to realize that behind the widgets are human beings who
hmm,
are benefiting from either that product or that service, or the organization, which is providing money that buys clothes for kids. Like, you have to dig down to some point where what you're doing is meaningful.
right.
And if you can't find that and you can't communicate that message to your people, you're going to be disengaged and you're going to lose your people. You cannot hold and retain quality people unless you have a strong vision. The second of those three is a strong set of values that people understand what the cultural norms are. By what metric am I making decisions? And they need to be shared, collective, and modeled by leadership. And that makes people feel, again, significant and like they have some sort of meaning behind what they're doing. And it makes people feel like that they're safe and they belong. And then the last one is that thing that we're doing, which is a shared mission. Um, it needs to be transparent, which means I understand what you're doing, what I'm doing, and it opens up collaboration. And collaboration is very exciting for humans. We love to contribute, um, and that unlocks a certain amount of reciprocity. So, when I'm helping you, then you feel compelled to help me.
Of
And
course.
then I'm like, oh, well, you help me now. I'm going to help you. And all of a sudden, that, the marketplace of energy is unlocked. And all of a sudden, it kind of feels fun going to work, and it feels meaningful going to work. And all of a sudden, I start looking at my coworkers and realizing, gosh, these are actually friends. These are, you should look forward to going to work. And your work may be shitty and it may be a really hard thing to do. But if you have a sense of kinship at work, then at least you're experiencing what's referred to as trauma bonding,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, yeah, we got through hard stuff together, and that in itself is meaningful. I mean, humans are built for adversity. We
Yeah.
just have forgotten it.
No, for sure. I mean, I think there was a funny meme. I don't know if you saw it, of like this like rocker guy like walking through his home and like basically putting like I believe it was like 1984, and like he hits the wall and he's like,
Oh
oh my
yeah.
God, did you, I don't know if you saw it, and then he hits another like the wall again, and it was like 1990 kids, like they get a little agitated, and then he hits the wall again, and the like 2000 kids, like I'm talking about the time, like they break down and can't handle anything. And it's funny, but I think we're reverting back to being where we can handle adversity and we can handle more than we think, right? Where we've, what's that saying, like weak men make like bad
Hard
times, hard
hard times.
times, yeah, and then
Mm-hmm.
strong men make good times, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that has been happening, right? It has,
Mhm.
we've created a culture of weak people. And I don't mean that to sound insulting or anything like that. It's across the board, right? We're just people, um, there's no grit, if that makes sense. Where our era, definitely we dealt with all kinds of things. It was gritty, it was intense. We were probably raised by parents that actually weren't even there. So a lot of times, like my parents were gone, right? So we were the latchkey kids, right?
Mhm.
And at home alone, parenting each other, my brother and I parenting each other. It was just, that was the culture. And now kids can't go out on the street and play. It's kind of ridiculous, but I think it's changing to the point, like the fact that you said that the younger generation are looking for more purpose. They're not being driven by that materialistic aspect. They're looking for more. They understand that that's not going to make them happy, right? Um, so speaking of that, why do you think so many people, so many of us are misaligned and feel like we have no purpose?
Yeah. Um, One of the core dynamics that sits at the heart of this whole conversation is um, people, both men and women,
Mm-hmm.
um, were born in a kind of needy adolescent operating system, which we're taking care of and we're being parented. And at some point, what is required is a system upgrade from that adolescent operating system, which is me focused. That's what children are. Children are focused on their needs
Right.
and their immediate gratification needs. So that's the adolescent psychology that needs to be upgraded into an adult psychology, which requires an initiation process. And initiation is basically the killing of the child so that the adult can be born. And it's very ritualistic, and it's not just an arbitrary thing that anthropologists invented of like, oh, initiation rituals. This happens, with the Cherokee in this manner. Like, no, this is universal to humanity. Every single culture in every era has initiation rituals,
Mm-hmm.
except ours.
Right.
And so we're living in a country that is being run by adults who still are running an adolescent operating system. They're
Right.
still me focused, immediate gratification, and it takes a lot to be able to organically self-initiate. And there are many schools of thought that says that actually cannot happen with men. So women have a tendency to self-initiate
Mm-hmm.
because you start menstruating. At some point you realize, yeah, I am a woman now,
Mm-hmm.
and there are still female initiation rituals, but they're not as required as they are with men.
Mm-hmm.
Men actually require other men to, ritualistically perform that act. And it does happen in kind of a shadowy initiation function, which you see happening in gangs, for example.
Mm-hmm.
When you get initiated into a gang, there are certain specific things that have to happen. There's some sacrifices. There's a tattooing. Those are all painful metaphors of the death of your previous life and then the birth of a new role as part of something bigger than yourself.
Kind of like the army, I'm sure too,
Oh
right?
yeah.
The big time
Mm-hmm.
initiations, like they break you down to
Oh yeah.
build you into the soldier they want you to be, right?
Yep. They shave your head, so now you have no
Yeah.
individual identity.
Mm-hmm.
They sleep deprive you, they isolate you from everybody you've known, your entire life, and they introduce you to a new code, a new brotherhood, a new tribe, a new mission, and you are rebuilt and reborn as a soldier.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the ones that do it the very best are actually the Marines, and I was
Mm-hmm.
Army. The Marines, um, shout out to all my Marine brothers and sisters, hoorah! But I was a soldier. I was in the Army, which means that when I left, I reverted back to something else. With the
Right.
Marines, they're always a Marine. There's no past tense.
Explain that to me, because I don't understand it, since I've never been into, the military and all of that. What does that mean to you exactly? What's the difference?
Well, I was,
Yeah.
and a Marine is.
Oh, okay.
So you could have not been in the Marines for 30 years and you're still a Marine
Interesting.
because you have been formally initiated into that tribe.
Right.
And you'll notice that you don't see a whole bunch of Air Force, Navy, Army bumper stickers, but you see a lot of Marines. And
Right.
the Marines are substantially smaller than all those other forces, but the identity or the affiliation that comes with an initiation into something is significant. And you can see successful organizations that have an initiation or an affiliation by how proudly people represent that as their identity. So,
Mm.
for example, we're both living here in Los Angeles,
Mm.
and the big rival universities
Right.
are
UCLA.
UCLA, where I went to school, and then USC, which is kind of where I teach, and so they're this rival tribalistic systems across town. Uh, you don't see a whole bunch of UCLA, but you see a lot of USC, and
Yeah.
they're the same. They're the same size. In fact, UCLA I think is bigger now. But again, there's such a sense of um, cultural affiliation that certain organizations have, and I can always tell when I go to a company by I can tell that sense of morale or kinship or affiliation by how proudly they represent their company. And for example, SpaceX, there's no dress code at SpaceX, and most organizations don't have any dress code at all anymore.
Yeah.
But you see most people wearing, you know, their, um, their colors, their livery.
Mm.
People
Okay.
who work at SpaceX wear SpaceX because they are proud of the vision that they share. The company stands for a vision,
Right.
and that vision is they are building big things that take us to another planet to get us another planet.
Mhm.
It's the most aspirational vision that you could offer a group of people, and so it attracts all these rabid fans who want to be part of that.
Right.
And then there's other companies, I don't know, Google and a bunch of other organizations that they haven't pitched, that lighthouse or that North Star, and so people are kind of like,
Eh,
yeah, like that's work,
work. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's got to be more than work because
It
that's where we
has to
spend
be.
most of our life.
Absolutely. I mean, as you know, I do real estate, but for me, being on a couple of teams that weren't very team orientated, and I do well. That actually part of my programming. I do astrology and human design and gene keys and all of that. I've done that for myself, and I thrive in small teams. I actually contribute a lot, and but I've found myself in, unfortunately, small teams that weren't really acting as teams. They would actually be competitive and, backstabbing and all of that. And for me, I was just like, what am I doing here? This is, yes, I make great money and all of that, but I'm not feeling a bond here. And I want to feel, like you said, we all are just, teenagers trapped in adult bodies wanting to belong to some sort of culture or tribe or something, right? Community. And for me, I just said, I'm just going to take some time off and, figure what I want to do out. And for me, I love having these type of deep conversations, one-on-ones, and like I said, trying to build something that's meaningful. And even though, yes, real estate's great, and you find the buyers very happy and it's very fulfilling in that sense, it wasn't fulfilling me soul wise. I needed more. And so that's why I kind of have stepped away from that. And I'm trying to align myself and build my own little community, and, and find people like you who are doing things that maybe I can be a part of and maybe contribute and, help humanity move forward from where we are at right now, right? Because I do believe we are in such an amazing time to transform this old paradigm and dismantle it. Because as we see, it's no longer working for humanity. We see that people are just so not satisfied in their lives and miserable, and I in 2020 honestly was such a blessing for a lot of people, because it had them step back and figure out, like, am I happy with what I'm doing? Am I happy with my life? What am I doing, And that's why I feel like a lot of people are hesitant to go back, and we're seeing a lot of migration, right? Not only in the United States, but throughout the world, because of 2020. So it's a blessing. It was a blessing and a curse in a lot of ways, but it opened up this big portal for people to actually initiate the change, and there's some people that are going back, and there's some people that are moving the needle forward in creating change and creating a difference in society, right? And as we saw in the past few years, our leaders have not, to put it in bluntly, are corrupted. A lot of them are corrupted and are unfortunately making these decisions on our behalf, where really the society needs to be pushing these people to really listen to bringing power back to the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, how do we change this leadership structure where society and humanity stops giving away their power to outside leadership and bringing that leadership back into their own lives, into their own family units, and into their own communities? How do we start that shift?
Yeah, a couple things related to that. We have become a culture of individuals, and without any unifying structure. Mm-hmm. And we talk about the need for alignment, and we need a shared, vision, values, mission. We need all those things to weld us together. And so it used to be, originally it was just survival. That was the big thing. Like, hey, if we hold together, then we don't get eaten. If we stay together, we can hunt significant game and survive. If we stay together, we don't die in the blizzard, in the ice age. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a survival protocol, and the world holds us together. The oldest form of spirituality is called animism, which mm-hmm. means everything has a soul. We have a soul, and all the things on the shelf behind you has a soul, and it's connected. Yeah. And at some point that was replaced by an external religion. Mm-hmm. It was almost nature got rejected for the sake of religion, and that fulfilled the job of holding us together. And a lot of it was fear-based, of course, but it still held us together, because you don't want to go to hell, right? There's a heaven afterwards, and if I do the right things that all the right people are doing, then I'm held together. Science killed God, right? As Nietzsche famously said, that God is dead, and now we are alone. We're all alone. There's nothing else to provide a shared set of values or morality or agenda. So we are shattered. And Nietzsche, that's where the genesis of the term Superman came from, is that Nietzsche said, in order to replace God and all the things that God provides us in terms of our stability and culture and shared experience on the planet, we are going to have to become that. And basically he's saying, good luck, humans.
Right.
And so now, the reason why the United States is such a bastion of, at least historically, hope and freedom is that we were the first people to have a formal constitution that was the thing, the super tribal structure that held us together. It was the new breed of commandments, right? When we're traveling through the desert and we're lost and we got 40 years of going through that. Well, at some point you give up and you start worshiping the false idols. And unless you go up the mountain and come back down with the commandments. And really that's what our, the Constitution is that was here. These are the principles that we all abide. Doesn't matter what state or what person, we have a national set of beliefs and culture that holds us together.
Right.
And most people we're that, and as we have torn down our institutions,
pardon me. Of course, the day they start to do work. Sorry about that. Continue.
No worries. So a bunch of individuals are unable to do anything significant,
right?
Because you can't. We need a collective set of people operating together, aligned on something, and so that's kind of where we're at. And all the leadership that currently is running our country, those are a bunch of individual centric people. They're there to get theirs. And that was not the case in the genesis of our country.
Right.
I mean, in today's market, George Washington would be worth $4 billion.
Oh, for
sure. He did not want to be general. Like, he was doing great. He disliked all the taxation without representation, and there was the British were shitty at that point. So, but he definitely did not want to go leave, all of his great business workings and go sleep in the snow at Valley Forge.
Right.
But he did it because it was required as a form of service, leadership, position. That requires a sacrifice, and it should.
Yeah.
And then
big time.
And then right after, our War of Independence, we were being throttled by the other big European countries, and we were about out at that point. And they came again to George Washington, who was running his businesses and building canals and being an entrepreneur. And they're like, hey, we know that you paid your dues, but would you be willing? And he didn't want it. He did not want to be president. It was a substantial step down, and it was misery, but he was willing to do it. He lost, vast amounts of wealth in the time he was president, and his health. And he did it because it was a duty. He did it because it was required of him. He wasn't doing that in any way. And they offered him royalty. He had the military behind him, and they were pushing him to become King George Washington. And he's like, no, you are disbanded. There is no kings here.
Right. That's the whole reason that you came to America, is to get away from the kings, the taxation, all of that. But here we are paying, 23% taxes now. But anyways, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah. Anyway, so what we're seeing now is incredibly self-serving politicians. Yeah. And we deserve what we have gotten. Yeah. Because we voted for them. And I'm going to make a kind of a little shameless spin here. And I'm not normally specifically political, but
I'd love to talk about it, because
I'm going to talk about it because, hey, I'm on here. This is my minutes.
And I can't stand how corrupted everything is. And but like you said, we deserve what we get, because we're not stepping up to the plate as society to make a change. And we're just like, oh, well, but the better of the lesser of two evils. And it's like, it really, is that what we're settling for? The lesser of two evils? Yeah. No.
So, just a little short story, but before I give this little short story, it's one of the things that I'm pushing with the men's movement now, is that the men's movement is about, healing of, the ancestral traumas of our fathers. It's about escaping from a lot of the just misery that men are wallowing through. But that's not the goal of a life, is, healing and escaping. The goal of a life is at some point providing a service that is meaningful and purposeful and fulfilling. And so when I look at all of these current people who are working on getting theirs and healing themselves and getting aligned and finding it's like, have you gone to a school board meeting? Are you engaged in your community? There's a lot of things to do, and none of it's sexy, people.
Yeah.
Like, and if it's not immediately self-serving, then people don't want to be involved with that.
Right.
So again, this is that adolescent operating system of, what about me? Like, it's not about you. It's about the service you can provide the collective. But that big jump is rare in today's coaching. So here's my story. My wife and I, we work down at Gold's Gym. We work out, and I'm a really good judge of command bearing and leadership, and I'm captivated by men and women who have that.
Yeah.
And there was a man in there at Gold's Gym, and there was a couple other guys that went up and just to greet him, and he was just had this tangible command presence, and I was like, this is a head of some big industry, and somebody I should meet, or he's like a newscaster. He's somebody with a gravitas, and so I just went over and chatted him up about just some manly bullshit, how about those Dodgers, or I don't know, some stupid shit.
Yeah.
And he didn't give any hustle or promotion. He just said, "Yeah, my name's Bobby. Nice to meet you." And I was like, okay, maybe, I guess my guess was he probably ran a construction company and worked with a lot of men. And that's what compelled me as a man to be like, you're a king. Like, you have a leadership presence.
Has that energy. Yeah.
And then it was like a month later, saw that same man on the news running for president.
Yeah.
RFK.
Yeah.
Running for president, 24. So this is the first leader that I've met that didn't want it. He doesn't want to run for president. I mean,
he has
to. he's dragging his family through the mud. He's like, and obviously he's a Kennedy, so you could say it's in his blood, which is, I mean, I do believe there's a lot of genetics, ancestral stuff that his family's born with some sort of leadership.
Yeah, that Kennedy
gene, or whatever it was. But I'm excited about that man. And unless some horrible skeletons come out of the closet, like, that's the first one I've seen. And I was excited about Obama too, and then incredibly disappointed.
Yeah. Oh God.
I mean,
so beautiful.
Like, I was so excited about that man. Like that. Hey, here we go. We can change the course of this ship. And he just drove us into the same path that we've been on. So anyway, I'm just shameless plug. My boy, RFK 24.
I agree with you 100%. I've watched, and it's hard for us to trust, right? Because we've been misled so many times. Obama being case in point. Hope, 2008. I was there at Venice Beach Wines when he won, and we were like, going crazy. And of course, he led us into more wars, killing more people, all of that.
Guantanamo still open.
Yeah.
Afghanistan still in it. It's like, dude.
As Michael Jackson said, smooth criminal, like smooth talker, knew how to talk to everybody and made it all sound eloquent and beautiful. But, I do have hope for RFK, and again, that presence, you can see it when a man and or woman is operating in that aligned in their aligned power, they have a vision, they have a mission, they have something, right? You see it, it's energetically felt by everyone. And, even though I don't trust, even though my conspiracy theorist mind, will go over here, there's something energetically with him that feels good. You hear him speak and it's just like, wow, okay, I can get behind this man, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Even with that wrecked voice.
yeah, I mean,
It's still, you got to go, wow, okay. Thoughtful, heart-centric, hopeful, rejecting this tyranny of fear and,
yeah,
like,
vaccine injured, that's how he got the voice and all of that.
how
And but
did he, what was the story with that?
he is vaccine injured actually, but
Oh,
he's
okay.
never opposed, like he says, like
Hmm.
the polio vaccine and blah blah blah, all of that. So I agree with you. There's something energetically about him that feels good. Hopefully, God willing, it's true.
Yeah. And listen, if he ran as a Republican, I'd still be into him.
Yeah,
And he would have my vote. So, this is not like a party drum
yeah.
beat. This
No,
is that human as a leader drum beat.
100%. And personally, I don't abide by the two-party system. I think that whole system is broken anyways. I think we really have to have a system where the people decide, right? Not where we have in the end the electoral college, decide. And it's like, no, let the actual humans, the people, the votes decide, you know? Anyhow, we can go on and on about that. But I'm glad you brought him up because um I think he's a powerful man. And one of the discussions and the main reason, not the main reason, but a big reason I wanted to have you on is to talk about men. Obviously, men are 50% of the population, but when I was doing my research, I read a staggering and shocking uh, statistic that even though they're 50%, you guys are 50% of the population, you're committing 80% of the suicide.
Mhm.
And it's just so hard.
And the murders.
And the murders, right? Always. I mean, men usually are the ones who murder
Mhm.
people, but um, it's just so heartbreaking, how society has let men down. And you hear it every day, the patriarchy, misogyny, this and that, but yet here we are, the men are the ones that are suffering, and the men that are, they're killing each other, they're killing themselves. How can we fix this? How can we help men? How can I help men? How can, obviously having these conversations are important, but what can we as society do to help men? I feel that they're just so lost. And like you said, there's a lack of that initiation. And it's just,
Mhm.
when I read that statistic, it really, I shed tears because I was just like, this is so
Yeah.
sad. Even though, at the hands of men, I've definitely, not physically or anything, but, I've had been wronged by men, but my heart,
Mhm.
I've been forgiving and my heart goes out and all of that. And for me, it's just a really heartbreaking statistic to hear about that and to
Yeah.
see the men suffering, and it's
Well, just to add some more you know logs onto that wood pile. We're also over 80% of homelessness on people in the street.
yeah.
We're vastly over 80% of incarcerated people in the United States. Um, we have a substantially larger amount of clinical depression, addiction. We're failing out of the school system all the way, starting from elementary.
Yeah.
We're starting to underperform, and we are now dropping out of even higher education
Hmm.
in all the fields of study except for STEM, right, which is very small.
Right.
So, men are not doing well across the board these days, and obviously men are the problem because um, we sit at the halls of power. We're the ones that built the world,
Right.
and so we're the problem and we're the solution. to the world. And there are certain, dynamics just about men and women that traditionally the matriarchal system, which is ancient. I mean, it is a core aspect to indigenous cultures everywhere. There's always a matriarchal aspect, and it runs the inner tribal behavior. So all the decision making, resource management, socializing, marriage, like all the things that happen within the tribal sphere are basically matriarchal in almost every culture. And the patriarchal aspects of it are extra tribal, which is the hunting and defense and exploration and travel and everything that's outside. And so it was really a harmony between those two dynamics. And that remains today, except now women are supposed to do both. They're supposed to take care of all the house, all the kids, all the food, all the nurturing, all the inner family behavior, and do all the men things too. And it's breaking you. And men are required also to do the same. Is that we're supposed to be protecting and providing and leading and building and repairing, but we're also supposed to be, sensitive and do all of the inner work. So this is not serving either one of us. Is running both of those. We're supposed to be synergistic, and we've lost that partnership, that gender partnership that we're designed to have. I mean, I think it's a design feature of our species. So, with men, the things that we do, our jobs, are very hard.
Yeah,
we do the hard jobs, and that isn't to say that raising kids is not hard. And doing that, it's a different kind of hard.
absolutely.
Like you look at, Jordan Peterson famously is like, well, 99% of the bricklayers in the world, the people who go down the sewers, the people who climb the telephone lines, they're all men. Like
Yeah, I don't want to do it.
Like, yeah, the people who are doing all of that, like classically hard shit, that's masculine, and we willingly do it. It provides us a lot of meaning and purpose, and but to do those jobs, you have to be able to shut down your emotions. You cannot go salmon fishing up in Alaska if you're sensitive, if you're vulnerable, if you're expressive, and if you're emotional. Like, you're not going to survive a day on that boat. And the same thing in war, the same thing to be a police officer, the same thing to do any hard thing requires a certain ability to shut down your emotions so that you can conduct hard missions. And so the process of reintegrating back from that high trauma warrior class behavior and then come back into the family and into the sphere of your woman and to be emotionally available, we haven't received any of that training. And so not only is there a challenge of reintegration coming back to the family unit, but there's now something that's called moral injury happening. And that's actually a military term. It means that if a soldier or a police officer experiences trauma, that's that in itself is wounding, but it's not the thing that causes the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. Those symptoms are really caused from the lack of being accepted back into the tribe. And so there is a universal almost a punishment by our culture of men. Like, we're the whipping boys of society. And what that's doing is saying, we want you to keep doing all those things, those hard things, and you're bad.
Yeah.
And that's really the thing that when soldiers go off to war and then they come back and get spit on, or they get judged and ashamed and isolated and ostracized, that's when you see the rock bottom, where you see all the triple D, drunk, disabled, divorced.
Yeah.
So that's happening universally with men now, is that there's a universal condemnation of masculinity. And so what to escape that public shaming, men are collapsing back from traditional masculine behaviors. And so we're no longer protecting and providing and leading, and there's a tremendous amount of emasculation happening,
Yeah.
at which is then, and I, honestly, with as many men as I work with, well, they all have women, and I just hear the constant, like, where are all the good men? Where are all those strong men? Where are those men that are willing to do those things? And it's like, well, you've broken them.
Yeah.
So,
And scared the shit out of them, too. Like they to voice their opinion, to express their anger, because God forbid, a woman, as soon as he gets angry, anything happens, women are calling cops and doing this and just, punishing men. It's crazy. It's crazy to me, but it's so sad.
so that's probably the first thing is, at some point we need to stop the demonizing
Yeah.
of any,
Anybody.
yeah, to judge somebody by a specific trait that they have is bigotry, and the opposite of misogyny is called misandry. It's a hatred for men, and it's pervasive.
Yeah.
And even the women that I know and love, um, it sneaks out, and again, I'm not a sensitive guy like, oh, microaggressions, but watch the advertisements, watch
Oh, yeah.
the portrayal, watch the language, listen to the lyrics. Like, it is pervasive. The misandry in our culture is outrageous.
Yeah, everything right now is white supremacy. Everything right now is misogyny. Everything right now is the patriarchy. It's like, stop. Take responsibility. And I believe each individual has to, including myself, I'm not exempt from this. I know that I've, in the past talked shit about men, but no more, no more does that stuff come out of my mouth, because I feel for men. For me, it's so heartbreaking to see what's going on culturally right now. And luckily I think it's shifting a little bit, but we have a long ways to go. Men need to figure this out within themselves. How do they start? How, like, a man listening right now that's like feeling lost, that's feeling, low, or, not knowing what to do, and what can they do? What steps can they take to?
Well, there is a men's movement that is alive and well right now,
Yeah.
and there was a previous men's movement in the 1980s that, you know that was really a response to the feminism of the 60s and 70s, and there was recalibrations that needed to happen. There was and these recalibrations are required to move our society forward. So, the civil rights movement, the feminist movement, these were all really, really important events that needed to heal and center our culture. Many of these have gone too far the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And so there was that the original men's movement was kind of a response of like, okay, we're not accepted in society anymore, so we need to escape that and go off on men's retreats and drumming and all those things. And it petered out because it never really got embedded with the blue collar men, accepted by the veterans and the cops and the mechanics. And it was mostly the men who had the ability to go escape, right? Or they had no careers or success in society, so it's easy to escape. So anyway, it died out, but it's back now, and it is back in full force. And um, so my first recommendation for men, if you're suffering, is you're probably one of these lone wolf guys who doesn't need other people, and you've learned to be this self-reliant person. Um, and I'd invite you to kind of take a look at that. And the analogy I use with that is, is I do a lot of work with wolves, and wolves are built to hunt big game. They don't hunt rabbits. They don't, they're built to cooperatively pull down things that are significant, and that's both literal and it's metaphoric. You can't do that alone. You can't do anything meaningful in your life alone. You can't do anything significant or purposeful alone. We're not built for it. So find a men's group. Or if it's not a formal men's group, then find some sort of fraternal place where men are doing masculine things. And jujitsu schools are probably one of the best places to start, because it's kind of life and death technology, and therefore people are very honorable. And honor is a key word for masculinity, and it's one that needs to be reclaimed. Marines are honorable. It's a code. There's an ethos that is related to honor. And really what honor is your reputation. It's your reputation amongst your men, your brothers. So martial arts, particularly jiu-jitsu, is great. But there is a men's group of your political, philosophical flavor, all the way to hardcore, shoot them up, get in shape dudes, all the way to much more soft inner work. So get in a men's group and start doing the work, because it will connect you to other men, and that's really where all the healing happens.
Yeah.
And my men's group is called K4, which stands for King of the Four Houses. And it's we've got a really big chapter here in Los Angeles, and you've got guys all over the world.
Beautiful. Can you go into that a little bit? What are the chapters of that? What does it mean? And I'd love to know a little bit more about that, and for anybody listening.
Yeah. So the website is k4men.com, and we run an initiation process, which is not classic initiation in the sense that you're going to get, I don't know, a tattoo and get jumped into our gang.
Yeah, beat down.
This is an introduction to the core of what's referred to as mythopoetics, which is men's work. Mythology and poetry. It's really metaphor, and metaphor is the universal truths that never happen but always are. Anything in religion, anything in mythology, anything that's metaphor. And so mythopoetics is men's work, and our rite of passage or initiation is a 3-month-long online program with a dedicated group of guys that are going through the same process. And we study the hero's journey and the masculine archetypes and a lot of emotional regulation stuff, but also just philosophically what it means to be a man in today's culture.
Mm-hmm.
And we do service projects and retreats, and do business together, that's also a requirement for men. We do need to, I don't know, you and I are pretty close. Can you hear the helicopter outside?
No, I can't. Not here.
Okay. LAPD helicopter flying.
Yeah, I'm sure something's happening every day.
So anyway, so a men's group will go a long ways to getting you connected to some of the big philosophical things that should have been given to us in our initiation.
Yeah.
Like that's how initiation works, is the elders, they come and they download the song of your people. And this is the way that you now behave as a man. So that boy thing, that's done. We're pulling you from your mother's house. You are now with us as a man, and you are required to do these things. right? And so those things are always going to be connected to honor. So your job is to protect those who are less strong than you, always. This is universal. Your job is to provide for the people in your care. Your job is to lead. Your job is to, do all these traditionally very wholesome and needed masculine behaviors that are kind of rejected by current culture.
Beautiful. And last but not least, and I know we talked about men and all of that, but I know you in your teachings and in your programs, you work with both men and women. And this is more of like a personalized question in terms of how as we as individual men or women start to become leaders in our own self, first of all, doing that work, and also in our communities, how can we start building ourselves up and community up, to create better cultures, to create, a generation of like elders. Eventually we're going to be the elders. How can we, I guess, not reprogram, but bring the elder mentality back into, let's say, for instance, a city here like LA. I mean, it's so vast, it's so big, it's complicated, right? It's difficult in such a big space. Communities back in the day obviously were little small 100-person tribes, right? Now we're billions of people, let alone here in LA. Where are we at? 7 million people. How do we create that?
Yeah. It's going to happen at a small scale.
Yeah.
There will be a rebirth of tribe, and that's always, going to happen. It has been happening. Is that there's little small groups, affiliations, whether it be, through work or, the dog park where we recently connected, or it's at, the restaurants or it's the things that you do, right? And to be very intentional about going to the places and the activities that are more altruistic or uplifting. I mean, that's kind of the big one.
Yeah.
Those are the people that will hold us accountable and support us for our journey, because we will continually fall back to the place that's comfortable for us. Nobody does hard things without some purpose, and that purpose ideally should be the service of something that's larger than us.
Right.
So, finding a cause, getting involved, and really upgrading your tribe, upgrading your circle.
Yeah.
If you're around people who are party people, you're going to be a party person, but if you're around people, who are making things happen physically or emotionally or financially, then you're going to be part of that.
Yeah.
And so working your way into those circles is absolutely vital. And it is everywhere. There are opportunities, but you're going to have to get rid of a lot of the base behavior that we all drop into, and again, like, this is a magical box and it's filled with shit, but it's also filled with gold. And Los Angeles is the same way. It's filled with self-serving, shallow, superficial people who are looking for distractions. And then there's those really good people who are, on a heroic journey for something that is more significant. And so when we find those people, you want to hold them close, and start fostering that. And that I know we're running out of time here, but Joseph Campbell, he's the one that kind of initiated or discovered the concept that all of our stories are really one story. It's the mono myth behind everything. And that heroic journey is the process of going into chaos and being transformed by it. It is the initiation process that we talked about. It is where all of our individual and collective journeys are taking us. And really, at the end, the hero's journey is not a journey to save the world. It is a journey to save ourselves. But in the process of saving ourselves, we end up saving the world because the influence of vital people vitalize. Joseph Campbell. So become, the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
Probably Maya Angelou or Gandhi or somebody said that, but deal with your addictions, deal with your adolescent coping mechanisms, deal with all of this self-serving behavior. And what you'll discover is that when we start doing that, you'll discover that there's other people who are also doing that. And those are the allies on your journey. Though that really is your tribe. And so your behavior is going to dictate a lot of the people that are, destined to be your people.
I love it. And it's so true. I just, being on this path myself and on this journey, this is why I started this, because the last 2020 set me off on a separate path. And as you know, and I mentioned to you, I don't drink anymore. I'm not going to the wine bar like I used to, all of that type of stuff. And I felt a little lost, because I've been looking for a new tribe. Honestly, I've been looking for people that have that goal and that mindset of like, let's change this trajectory we're on, because it's not satisfying anymore to me, on the path that I was on before. And of course, when you make that shift, you lose a lot of people along the way. So while it's sad, it's also beautiful because it's opened up the doors for like this reconnection. I mean, how long have we known each other, but now we're connecting on a different level, and you're doing amazing work. And I love sharing this information with people who might need it. You never know who might listen to this and will sign up or what have you, or, reach out. You never know. Right. And this journey of self-discovery and healing, what you said, the addictions, the childish behaviors, in the beginning it's a lonely road, but slowly but surely you start finding your people, and you start finding the people who are saying yes to the invitations. And it's beautiful to see, and it's beautiful to know that you're not the only one on the path. So I'm really grateful to you, A, for the work that you've been doing, and B, for being willing to come on the show and talk about these things, because I think the subject of men right now it's big time for me. I just, when I started reading up on the statistics of everything that's going on with men, and and I just seeing what's going on in culturally right now with, you can't say woman anymore, you can't say man. It's gotten off the rails.
Yeah.
And it's good to know that there are sane people out here who are like, no, relax. There's room for all of us, but let's not, forget tradition here. Woman is woman, man is man, and there's room for you too, but let's not get it twisted. This is a fact here, and we're built differently, and I think specifically, like you said, men need initiation, and it's just beautiful to me to see that you're doing that work and putting that stuff out there for men. It's so needed right now.
Thanks for being a champion.
So thank you for coming on, and I'm sure I'll see you at the park.
I'll see you at the park.
Yeah, and then send me any links and all of that, and I'll make sure to put everything down in the show notes and all of that. So
you got it.
Thank you again.
Thank you, friend. Really fun to hang out with you.
You too. Have a great day. Bye.